Watson and I'm the founder of Seed magazine.
Seed is a culture and music magazine, and I started this with Circa 16 last summer, and we sort of look to discuss topics from across the world with all different music genres, and my love for it comes through like jazz and soul music, so I tend to focus on that more. Currently I'm documenting the Scottish jazz scene for my university project, and I think it's back to something that needs to be spoken about. What I'm looking at is the history of it with the 70s and 80s and being in club culture and being like a club music, and now like the musicianship and the bands that are coming, especially from Glasgow, is really exciting. I think with the way the music's going, that jazz will start like being infused into stuff that we all know and love. I think with a small town like Dumfries, a platform like DMC is great because it sort of explores the avenues in music that a small town need to know about, instead of just gigs and like going to see live music. There's so much that with sort of the small culture you can get in a small town, I think that's really important. And I think that's where I've got my introduction with music, is through like fashion and just culture in general. So I think that's the inspiring part about a small town, is that you can speak to people and you can like work with so many people different ages, and there's lots of opportunities. I think with Dumfries there's room to be yourself, and you can be unique in your music taste, which is really lovely to have growing up. And moving to Glasgow, there's so many people that are the same as you, and you can get lost in that. So I think it's nice to feel like you're doing something different in a small town, and I think that's why I still and will always love Dumfries and like working there. I think with the rural setting, there is a lack of exposure to music, especially with just getting bands to Dumfries. And throughout history, it's been something that is totally doable, but when we are so close to bigger cities, it is easy just to go there. So I feel like the rural setting's great in its own way, but when it comes to music, I think it has had its disadvantages. I think the music scene in Dumfries, the attitude towards like new music or exploring different scenes or like putting events on is still a little close-minded. And I think the opportunities to put things on is great. And I think with the accessibility, like a town as small as it is, people are up for new things. But I think getting like an overall variety of people can still be quite of a struggle. And I think young people still have this mentality of wanting to move away, and I think that's so fair, because we all tend to do that, but sort of remembering or going back is really important too. And I think putting something back to the community that you grew up in is just really important. I think an ideal music scene in Dumfries would be quite casual, maybe pubs that were specific to some genres. It would be really beneficial for Dumfries to open up to different genres and bring bands from like Glasgow and Edinburgh. I think for me, one thing I love to do is go to festivals, and the lineup's so important, or it's fun to see new people, but I still do feel like there's not a lot of women represented in lineups, or they're like not the big headliners, or they're pushed aside, and it's more so than ever you do look for that.
I am Uchima, and I'm a session musician. I sing and play keyboards. I grew up in Japan. I moved from Japan to Scotland when I was 15. And although I have a Scottish mother, English was not easy for me at all. So when I first moved here, I spent a bit of time in Glasgow first. Could not understand what was going on. And naturally, music, maths and art, so easy. It was a bit of a relief from all the other subjects. I didn't have to use my brain in a complicated way. So that's how music became one of my favorite subjects. And then when I moved to Dumfries and Galloway from Glasgow, there was like this really naturally good music. There was a music buzz. So I went to London to study music, and that was a bit of a shock from being a bigger fish in a small pond to the tiniest fish. I lost all of my confidence and I didn't really sing for 2 years after graduating uni. A bit of a traumatic experience, but if it's your path, you're meant to do it. So women are being used more in bands because it's trendy to have female musicians. It's trendy to have more of a diverse cultural mix. And I happen to tick both boxes because I'm Asian and I'm female. That's happening a lot, I'm seeing, which is a good thing. It would be nice if we can, as a humanity, get to a place where we are beyond race and gender and we're just humans. No discrimination, inclusive, and it'd be nice to just be in fluidity. But I know that we have a long way to go still. I have noticed that there's a good balance of energies. So I remember the music industry being very masculine to the point where I felt quite crushed being the feminine in a group dynamic. But now there's a really beautiful balance of feminine energies. And this is beyond gender. I'm talking about energies. So feminine energy and masculine energies becoming a bit more in harmony. And I've noticed that a lot of masculine men embracing a softer side too, embracing their feminine energies, and it just feels a lot softer, a bit more gentle. This is compared to before. I think it's still, the machine itself is very hard and masculine, but there is a definite increase of softer, gentler energy, and it feels a bit more fluid. When there's a good balance of both, there's this comfort.
I'm Miriam. I'm a DJ / music lover / music student. As a teenager, I was in a band in Dumfries, and I played guitar and I sang and I started songwriting and performing with them. And then soon after that, I started mixing, and it's only really the past few months I've actually started doing more DJ bits. So yeah, I've been mixing for 4 years. The music scene in Dumfries has very nice community feel, because everyone kind of knows each other. Dumfries isn't exactly the place where people stop on their tours, or it's not in a circuit of where DJs would go or stuff like that. It's it's kind of own thing, and so I guess Dumfries' music scene is a little sort of bubble. It does allow room for people to kind of grow in a sort of different way, because they maybe don't feel as much pressure as in the other cities, but can still have a big impact because it is a smaller scene. If it were me, what would be more attractive is just cooler venues, cooler spaces for people to perform in. When I think of the spaces that we were performing in when I was a teenager, it was the venue and pubs and stuff, and they just didn't quite suit what we were going for. So it would be cool, and I think you've seen that with the plaza and stuff, which they're using the spaces that are there, which I think is really cool. As a woman entering into music, it can be daunting because I feel the sort of technical side of things can be very masculine in a way. It's maybe not a good way to describe it, but there's lots of jargon and things that I see men get nerdy about, and I often feel it's kind of just a testosterone war of who knows the most about what gear. I just would like to see more women teachers, or women who are bringing people into it, because I feel a lot of the information that I've been given online and everything is coming from men, it's coming from like a male perspective. So like to have like just like a kind of softer like female perspective to kind of guide one in, because it is so male dominated, it does kind of deter people a little bit. And so just like the more that people do it and are actively doing it, like the more others are encouraged to.
My name's Jem Mack. I'm a producer from Dumfries in the southwest of Scotland. I started my series Guided by Environment, which is basically where I go to different locations within Dumfries and Galloway. I then record a bunch of found sounds from that location and then take them home to my computer and turn them into little tracks. I think a lot of people come to Dumfries and get disappointed because it doesn't deliver like a city. And if you're trying to take Dumfries like a city, of course you're going to be disappointed. I think there's beauty in Dumfries because it's a rural town, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that, and I don't think we should be striving to be like a city because that's not our strong point. We have a really beautiful big town here that makes nature so accessible in a way that you don't often get. And for me as a producer, it's maybe not where I'd want to be if I wanted to perform live more, but I love writing music, and to be somewhere where you can be inspired so much. So another thing that kind of annoys me about Dumfries is the way people talk about there being nothing to do. I think there's an element of truth to that, but I think that's why it's such an inspiring town for musicians. Probably if I'd maybe grown up in Glasgow or somewhere like Newcastle or Manchester, I probably would have had a bit more of a social life. There would have been more stuff to do. I wouldn't have spent those hours sitting in my bedroom like playing guitar in the same way. So I think for me, Dumfries as a music town does need more trendy bars, and it needs more disco nights and DJ and performance opportunities. But I think at the heart of Dumfries, further down the line as a music town, it starts with education, because we've got so many people here that are looking for something to do, and we have something for them to do. We're just not delivering it to them properly. So there used to be this kind of classic Dumfries cliche that was all about like, there's nothing to do in Dumfries except drink. And particularly as a trans woman, the town isn't a particularly safe place to be on a night out. And I think all of that's a shame in and of itself, but I think consequentially, all of those effects extend to the music scene. We don't really have like any trendy bars like, I don't know, like Hug and Pint or King Tut's, or we don't have an equivalent of that's a safe space that does shows sometimes, and like just generally, I think what we really lack is like a pub that young people would want to go to in the town. I think without getting into it too much, I think people need better understanding of trans identities. I think the way we treat trans people in this society is fucking abysmal, and I normally wouldn't swear on camera, but to be honest, I think that's the only way to really communicate how bad it is. And I think we need a better understanding of trans identity, particularly as a treatment to dysphoria, and kind of it not just being people, it is people expressing themselves, but there's like a deep-seated, it almost feels like heartbreak was something I read recently, and I think that sums it up pretty well. It's like this intense heartbreak your whole life. And I think people need to start understanding, like, we don't just throw clothes on and think that's what gender is. There's more to it. And I think with better education to that, we can actually start constructively overcoming challenges rather than getting caught up in these trivial arguments that gender seems to be caught on nowadays.